Did Neanderthals really go extinct, or did they just quietly disappear into us? For over 100 years, we've been told a simple story. Modern humans showed up in Europe, and Neanderthals, our closest ancient relatives, vanished, extinct, wiped out, case closed. But the deeper scientists dig, the stranger this story gets, because the evidence doesn't point to a clean extinction at all. It points to something far more complicated and, honestly, far more unsettling. Let's start with who the Neanderthals actually were, because most people picture them completely wrong. They weren't hunched, stupid cavemen dragging clubs around. Neanderthals had brains as large as ours, in some cases even larger. They made sophisticated stone tools, controlled fire, wore clothing, buried their dead, and some evidence even suggests they created art and jewelry. They survived brutal Ice Age winters across Europe and Asia for over 300,000 years. That's roughly 30 times longer than modern civilization has existed. Whatever happened to them, it wasn't because they were primitive. So when did things start to change? Around 45,000 years ago, modern humans, Homo sapiens, began migrating into Europe, territory Neanderthals had called home for hundreds of thousands of years. For a while, both species existed side by side. Then, within just a few thousand years, Neanderthals disappeared from the fossil record entirely. To scientists, that's an incredibly short window, so the obvious question became, what happened during that overlap? The first and most popular theory is direct conflict, the idea that modern humans, arriving in larger numbers with more advanced weapons and social coordination, simply outcompeted or violently displaced Neanderthal populations. Some researchers point to evidence of long-range spear-throwing tools used by modern humans, compared to Neanderthals' shorter thrusting spears, which required getting dangerously close to prey, or possibly enemies. If Homo sapiens could hunt and fight from a distance, while Neanderthals could not, that alone could have created a devastating imbalance whenever the two groups clashed over territory or resources. But here's where the story gets more complicated. Direct warfare alone doesn't fully explain the evidence. Some scientists argue Neanderthal populations were already small and scattered before modern humans even arrived. Genetic studies suggest their overall population may have numbered only in the tens of thousands across the entire continent. A population that small is incredibly vulnerable, even without conflict. Disease, environmental pressure, or even a string of harsh winters could have devastated groups already living on the edge. Speaking of environment, climate change is another major suspect. Europe during this period was going through wild temperature swings, rapid shifts between extreme cold and brief warmer periods. Neanderthals were incredibly well adapted to cold environments, but these rapid, unpredictable shifts may have disrupted the animal migrations and plant growth they depended on for food. If modern humans were more flexible in their diet and hunting strategies, they may have simply adapted faster to a changing world, while Neanderthal populations struggled to keep up, shrinking generation after generation until they simply couldn't sustain themselves. Now here's where the story takes its strangest turn, because extinction might not be the right word at all. In 2010, scientists sequenced the Neanderthal genome for the first time, and the results shocked the scientific community. Most modern humans with non-African ancestry carry somewhere between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. That means Neanderthals didn't just disappear. In a very real biological sense, they never fully left. Modern humans and Neanderthals interbred, repeatedly, across thousands of years and multiple regions. Think about what that actually means. Somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, a Neanderthal and a modern human had children together, and their children had children, and so on, generation after generation, until pieces of Neanderthal DNA became permanently woven into the human genome, DNA that some of us are still carrying around today, without even knowing it. Some of this Neanderthal DNA is linked to modern traits, like skin pigmentation, immune system responses, and even how some people process certain medications. In other words, Neanderthals may not have gone extinct in the traditional sense. They may have been genetically absorbed into our species entirely. This raises a genuinely mind-bending question. If a species interbreeds into another population until its distinct identity disappears, is that extinction, or is it something closer to merging? Some scientists now argue that extinction might be the wrong framework entirely. Instead, they suggest Neanderthals may have been slowly absorbed, diluted generation after generation, until there simply weren't enough pure Neanderthals left to be recognized as a separate group anymore. There's also a darker possible piece to this puzzle: disease. When two populations that have been isolated from each other for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly come back into contact, their immune systems haven't been exposed to the same pathogens. This is similar to what happened much later in human history, when European contact with the Americas introduced diseases that devastated indigenous populations who had no prior immunity. Some researchers believe something similar may have happened between modern humans and Neanderthals. New diseases carried by incoming Homo sapiens populations could have spread rapidly through Neanderthal groups with no biological defense against them. So, which theory is correct? Honestly, probably all of them, working together. Most scientists today believe Neanderthal disappearance wasn't caused by one single dramatic event, like a war or a plague wiping them out overnight. Instead, it was likely a slow, compounding collapse. Shrinking population numbers, climate instability disrupting food sources, competition for territory and resources with a more numerous, more adaptable species, occasional violent conflict, disease exposure from new contact, and, running quietly underneath all of it, generations of interbreeding that slowly folded Neanderthal genetics into the growing modern human population. It wasn't one single ending. It was many small pressures, stacking on top of each other over thousands of years, until a species that had survived for over 300,000 years simply couldn't hold on any longer as a distinct population.